Alright, so we're back and we picked up some pieces, a regulator for the newer style alternator and a wiring harness, which is somewhere here. But the problem is carburetor is flooding, the nylon seat stuck on it, so when I tried to start it, it filled up the back half of the carburetor. It was swimming in there anyway, so we shut it off. And the electric fuel pump wouldn't pull fuel up that high, so I just got tired of it and put on the mechanical fuel pump, and it works good. So we're going to take the carb off and we're going to go through it and rebuild it and then put it back on. These are pretty easy to take off. There's not much to them. On the side, what's underneath there? And we got to be careful not to lose any washers or nuts down the holes on the manifold. Yep, that's gonna come off. I'll fix that heat shield. I don't think this is the original carb to this motor. This is probably from a later 60s model Ford. Yeah, here's your tips and tricks. Have a small screwdriver like so and a magnet. Drop things. Now, should be. It's like one of those child's toys they have in the doctor's office with the wooden beads you slide along it. And disconnect your battery before you do something like this, so someone doesn't pull over and try and start it with no carburetor on it and blow fuel everywhere and light things on fire. We're going to go over to the carburetor bench and disassemble, carb clean it, and put the kit into it. Alright, so there's a few things that you need to do a carburetor kit, clean it. Good gloves, some paper towel, chemicals. I use a carb cleaner, combustion chamber cleaner. It'll even take the finish off on it if you leave it too long. And I use a little bit of brake clean, very coarse steel wire brush, which you have to be careful with because you can spark something up. If you're scared of that sort of thing and don't like to live life on the edge, you can use a brass one. And a cheap, fine paintbrush, preferably with a wood handle with no paint on it. The carb cleaner and the combustion chamber cleaner will make the handle all gooey and gross. So what I do first is take the combustion chamber cleaner and let it soak for a little bit. This stuff is really good for cleaning carbon, varnish, fuel varnish. So you want to try and keep this dirt and grime out of the inside. So I like to get rid of all this outside stuff first anyways. It makes it easier to clean. I used to use the carb cleaner that you would put in a bucket, the dunk type. The smell really bothered me, so I don't use it anymore. And if you don't use it all the time, it rots the bottom of the bucket out, and you'll go to pick up the bucket one day and you'll have a bunch of nasty, stinky carb clean all over your floor. Scrub some of it off here. Combustion chamber cleaner isn't as flammable as the carburetor cleaner or brake clean. This is an Autolite 4-barrel. Looks kind of like a Holly, but it's not. And I don't know what CFM this is. If I was to guess, I would say they are probably in the 550, 500 CFM, might be 600. I bet there's some Ford guys out there that know. I was told that the Ford cars and trucks that came with these Autolite carburetors actually lasted longer over the Holly. I think the simple fact is the Hollys are always over-fueling and it wears on things, thins oil out, extra carbon and varnish in the motor. The 2-barrel ones that I've done, they seem to have a nice crisp idle and idle clean, and they don't smell rich when they're off of the choke, and if they're working right anyway. These do have a power valve almost identical to a Holly carburetor, so they do have that same issue that if they backfire could pop them. The other thing this combustion chamber cleaner is good for is rusty bolts, especially exhaust bolts. But like I say, it has to be wet all the time or it doesn't work. If you can get it broke loose with that and then put a decent penetrating oil on it, they come out pretty good. Everybody's got their own brand of miracle spray that they like. This one's mine. Spray it down with some carb cleaner. Use my straw. Asbestos. And get a clean tub to wash the parts in. If you know somebody that plays guitar and they've got a broken E string, they are about the right size. It looks like it's about, oh, probably 20 thou, and they're good for poking through little holes and cleaning out orifices in the carbs. So we're going to start taking this apart, and first the air cleaner nut's got to come out. I'm pretty sure it holds the rest of it down. Leave all the screws in there. Don't want to mess with the adjustments, so we'll just pop the little C-clip off the choke mechanism here. It's very little. Choke stat to come out. This one's been converted to an electric choke. Just has a little bimetal coil in there, and there's a electric heating pad in there. Take note which way this goes. So we can take this piece out so we can clean out the bushing in there. We'll pop out this pin. Careful not to break that. The top off. So there's the underside. Peel this gasket off so it's in one piece so we can match it up if there is a couple different ones. Oh good, it has brass floats in it. Oh yeah, it's pretty nasty in there. Take note of which is the secondary float and which is the primary one. Scratch front and back on these. Just put a little F in there. R for rear. And we'll pop these out. There it goes. Ooh, that's interesting. That's to keep the fuel from sloshing back to the front to the rear. I've never seen those before. There's a passage to go from the front bowl to the rear bowl. And there's the two discharge ports. Emulsion tube. Well, in this outer tube there are holes. They will pull in air through these holes. And the more holes you have or less holes will determine what the mixture is through here. And that's after the fact that it's gone through the jet. And there's probably not a lot of people that mess with these. If you wanted to tune them, you basically flip them upside down, high end and your low end. Needed more fuel in the low end, oops. You would either add or subtract holes here, or if vice versa. Tip this up, catch the ball. There's the ball. It's vacuum secondary. And there's the spring. There's the air hole to run the diaphragm. Just unhook it. Just hooks in. And we need to take note which hole they used. So we'll mark this one. It's that hole. Pull out the rotten accelerator pump. Push this one in. And on the two barrels, these have a front and a back, but this one, this plate is the same all the way around. We're going to see how far these adjustment screws are in. 1 1/4-ish. So that would be the driver's side. Is that 1 1/2? Shit, I don't remember. We'll just say they're 1 1/2. We're going to use this fancy gray wrench because it's made in Canada. So 1 inch. When these power valves leak, you'll notice they'll start really easy, but they'll be really hard on gas. This one's stuck. And these have a little screen type filter in them, which we'll have to blow out and reuse because I don't think they give us new screens in those. They might, but that one's covered with junk too. Just melts away the varnish. Yeah, we'll see how this, if it's gritty in there, I might have to take it apart. No sense doing it half-fast, I guess. There's the brass piston. When you first start up the motor, the choke will be shut tight. And when it gets vacuumed, this will have an adjustment on here. And it'll just crack it just a little bit when it sucks it in from the vacuum from the motor. And it'll just tip the throttle plate just a little bit so it gets enough air so the motor doesn't chug, 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 and it'll pick up. But you need that plate shut, closed tight, so it'll give it a positive choke to first fire. And then as soon as it fires, well, the engine gets enough vacuum to pull this open. And then it just tips the plate just a little bit. And we're back from supper. The magic of TV, I cleaned everything up because I'm sure you didn't want to watch all that. This secondary throttle shaft was stuck in there, and that took me about an hour to clean that all out, get it freed up. While I was in there, I thought I would clean up the lip in the bottom of the venturi in there. Anyways, we die-grinded that out and blended it in, hoping that maybe we might get a few more CFM out of the secondary side because I think these carbs are fairly small. Alright, so I'll unbox this thing and check some of our gaskets to make sure they're the same. And we just flip her up and see if we see any holes that are there that shouldn't be there. Put in the power valve. Grease on there. Just has to be snug, it doesn't have to be over tight. Here is our gasket for the power valve. And whenever you're tightening something like this down, they don't have to be super tight because it's not steel you're tightening the screw into, it's aluminum, so it will strip, especially if it's been rebuilt a few times. Seems to me they were 1 1/4, but we'll barely till it stops. And then back it out 1. I'll go 1 1/2. Same with this side. 1 1/2. And it'll end up being 1 1/4 probably. So this has a little rubber one-way valve that goes in here. And then you pull it through, needle nose pliers on the other side, just until it pulls through just slightly. Just like that. This little orange guy, and then you have to snip it off. And then that little check valve, it'll pressure this up and hold pressure and want to put it through the bottom, up through this port, yep, through the center, and then it goes through your accelerator pump discharge nozzles. Can't imagine how guys do this with a camera in their hand. Must be real talented. And the accelerator pump's got to be tested once the carburetor gets thrown together. Make sure it's giving it a squirt. Just as soon as you hit the throttle, it should give it a little bit of a shot, and then there's no dead spots in it, because that'll make it a bog, hesitation, or a hiccup. Nice shiny one. Slide it in there. There's one washer. Put it on its side so the pin doesn't slide out. And we'll slide those in there. Sometimes there's imperfections on the needles and the seats. Let's see in there, but that should have a square cut and a nice sharp edge. Tiny little bevel on it. And if it's not machined properly, it will leak. You have to be careful when you're tightening these down because they're brass and you can get a brass chip in there. And there's a little clip that goes on the needle. See, there's the tip, neoprene tip, and then there's a little spring on here, clip that holds it onto the float tang and raises it up and down. Right on here. There is a spring that hooks in here to keep, yeah, that's right, because it's got to put slight tension on it. Getting tired, it's late at night here. And you never put pressure on the needle because you can make a groove in it. Snap ring back in there. Never touch the float setting on it. So we'll go 21-30 seconds on both. They give you these nice little squares with the 30 seconds measurements on them. And it should be, oh yeah, that's fine. Right on the money. Check everything. Check the needle and seat. The rear one. Yep, they're all right there. And we'll just snug this up. It just hooks right in there like that. Why is that not on? No, it's just tight like that. Well, I don't really like that. Some stuff that's aftermarket pieces are not quite made right. Alright, try that again. Like a glove. Toss this back on. Vacuum has to go through to pull on this diaphragm. And there's a spring in there that you have to hold at a constant position or it'll suck the whole thing into the hole and everything will be out of whack. The vacuum hole will be plugged and it won't work right. Secondary rod. It's our little homemade washer. This clip here doesn't pop through. There. Feels nice. Throttle blades are nice and free. Piston moves freely. High idle adjustment here. And this shaft, give it a little bit of light oil. If this isn't loose and free, it won't kick down. After the choke's been opened, it'll stay on high idle. There's a little gasket that goes around here. In there. This rod in. That little gasket seals off the port between this housing and the body for the vacuum for this choke brake. Make sure I got this in right, which I don't. It's way off. I'll get it right. Oh, this has to be the other way around. It doesn't. Lose all the screws in the ground. Give me a second to figure this out again. Get all the C-clips in there, and it works the way it's supposed to. Fast idle cam. There's the adjustment here. And this is actually missing a piece off of here. Right off the end of this, which I might be able to steal off a 2-barrel. And we're missing the hot air pipe. I can just cap that because we have an electric choke, so that's okay. Luckily for me, everybody throws this stuff away, and I can get it out of the dump. And this little guy. See if this one fits. I'm betting Ford didn't change it much. And it's way different. Maybe we can make that work. Throttle. You can see the blades are open. It's probably revving to the moon. And then it steps down, down, until it's at its base idle. Put some gas in it. Make sure it does what it's supposed to do with the accelerator pump. Should be enough gas in there to make it. You can see the accelerator pump discharge tubes right there. And when you just touch the throttle, it should be just a little blip. Should stay put. Kind of dying to see if this thing runs okay or not. Well, I'm impressed all the hell. I didn't expect it would run that good. Huh. And that's with a bad hole. The wrist pin keeper came out and it was gouging one of the cylinders. I gotta start that up again.